Hey everybody, welcome to another developer interview here at PSVR Without Parole. With me this week, Andreas, Julia's son, over at Fast Travel Games, who just announced Wraith the Oblivion Afterlife. Andreas, how's it going, man? It's been so long since we talked.
It has, but I've been busy. And, as you mentioned, we just announced our fourth game, really, in less than 4 years. So it's quite a nice pace we're keeping up at Fast Travel Games. Of course, we we had planned to make a bigger announcement on June 16 for this, but there were some leaks and some massive interest on the internet, so we decided to go a little bit early with our announcement. So yeah, no, it's all good. It's all good.
Yeah, I mean, let's just dive right into it, man. I guess the obvious first question is, why go for the Wraith license instead of just making your own horror game? Apex Construct was obviously its own IP. Why not just take that same route over again?
I think part is opportunity. Yeah, because in Sweden we have so many developers and publishers that you might have heard of, like Dice and Avalanche Studios, and then of course Paradox Interactive, who is the brand owner of the World of Darkness IP since some time back, and they have a couple of games now lined up for release: Vampire the Masquerade and Werewolf the Apocalypse as well, part of the World of Darkness. So they reached out to us actually last summer. We know some people there, of course. We're sitting very close to each other in Stockholm as well. You can basically throw stones at each other's studios. And we've been working, with some people in the past as well within the industry at Paradox. So they had an interest in sort of branching out the World of Darkness brand to try new things with it, and had an idea of making a Wraith game, and wanted to test the waters in VR as well. And of course, we've been positioning ourselves now over the last few years as one of the more prominent VR gaming studios in the world. I think we've proven ourselves with our last couple of games as well. We won a couple of awards. We're selling relatively good. So and they like the quality, and the sort of studio profile that we have is very much about narrative and world building and storytelling. So it was a really nice match for them to work with a studio like us. And from our perspective, it wasn't like we had an objective to make a horror game. But when this discussion started, we were so psyched about the potential in making a horror game based on the Wraith IP, because Wraith is very specific. It has a very distinct universe, of course, part of the World of Darkness, and monsters are real and living among us. But it also gave us a really, really cool idea about what if you were actually if you would be playing as a Wraith in VR, meaning that you would have these things happening around you where you could potentially impact the world, sort of like being a ghost or a spirit. Yeah, that's how it started. And then the more we talked about it, the more intrigued we were about making this game. And we have a lot of horror fans in the studio. I'm one myself. I'm a huge horror buff. So for me, this is really a dream project. We're trying to use whatever we learned from Apex Construct and Body Cuts 2, and even Curious Tale of Stolen Pets, to sort of mold that everything we learned into one amazing experience that the whole studio is actually behind right now.
I don't want to throw you under the bus if you're not, but are you specifically, or a lot of people on the team, fans of World of Darkness?
Yes, our creative director, Erik Odeldal, he's a massive fan. He used to play the old pen and paper role-playing games back in the 90s, the Wraith-specific ones, the Oblivion.
Perfect.
So he knows the World of Darkness brand from the inside out, and he's probably the most passionate person at the studio right now making this game. I used to play Vampire the Masquerade on PC, and I love that game. But that's as far as my sort of fandom goes. The more I read about it, the more I dig into it, the more I appreciate it. It's a fantastical and a fantastical universe to work with. But yeah, he's right, of course, and he's directing the game, and he's one of the biggest World of Darkness fans out there. So
Perfect.
that's a good match.
I mean,
Yeah.
as a huge horror fan myself, I'm a little bummed that I'm not familiar with World of Darkness at all. So I was going to ask this question myself, but I think one of our viewers asked it better. Almighty Smeg writes in and asks, how accessible will Wraith be for people like us who are totally unfamiliar with the license? Are you guys going to be throwing a ton of like exposition at us and like just like narrative all over the place, or is it pretty easy to dive into your game, even for novices?
Yeah, I mean, Wraith, hasn't had a video game yet. This is the first video game based on the official Wraith the Oblivion IP, and the pen and paper role playing games haven't been around for a long time. I mean, purists still play them, of course, but this is sort of a relaunch of the Wraith IP, and that's also one of the reasons that we had to have to make a game that's very accessible. Uh, we are giving the diehard fans a lot of Easter eggs and lore to dig into and enjoy. But in terms of gameplay and in terms of understanding the story and why you're there in this mansion, for example, it's that's as good as anyone, for anyone to play, because we wrote the story from the ground up. It's part of World of Darkness, of course, and it's based in Wraith the Oblivion world. But you can play the game really without knowing anything about Wraith and treat it as a really, really, hopefully, scary and hopefully really, really good horror game in VR.
You got to tell me, man. I don't think I could be wrong, but I don't think I've ever played a horror game from the perspective of a spirit, of a wraith, anything like that. I've always been, I think, a human being scared of those things. So how does horror work from the alternate perspective of being a wraith?
That's really interesting. I mean, usually, sometimes in horror games, you get kind of a power fantasy of, dominating whatever enemies and ghosts you're facing. At first, you might be afraid, but once you got your shotgun leveled up to a maximum level, or you got that rocket launcher with unlimited ammo, you kind of feel, that you're on top of the monsters really, and don't really have to be scared anymore. Playing as a wraith, or it's not referred to as a spirit or a ghost, but we can call it that. It puts you in a defensive position, so to speak, because you don't really understand what it means to be a wraith when you start playing the game. So you have to gradually learn and understand how to impact the world around you. You will have certain wraith powers that you unlock throughout the game, that we will reveal at a later stage. But there are also more sinister specters and stuff inside the mansion that are haunting you and hunting you. So it's very much it's a little bit of a stealth. And if you played games like Amnesia, The Dark Descent, or Alien Isolation, that's kind of the gameplay we're aiming for with this game as well. You will need to hide in some places in the game, and you will need to use caution and your wits, of course, to really, really understand your surroundings and use the environment and the sounds around you to survive in a mansion and find out what happened and why you're there. So it's a unique kind of power fantasy, I guess, to be a ghost, so to speak. But you're not going to be as powerful as you might have imagined. Not at least not.
I find it fascinating that this is the second time in probably just as many days that I've heard two people from Fast Travel refer to Amnesia: The Dark Descent and Alien Isolation, two of the pivotal, most impressive horror games that probably we've ever played. Do you get nervous about even mentioning those titles? Because that immediately gets a lot of fans excited and raises the bar for what you have to deliver. Can you deliver on
Absolutely. It is. I mean, I think it's, we haven't shown anything from the game yet, and we're getting a lot of questions as to what kind of game is this. I would want to set sort of expectations right from the start. And using those two games as a reference, I think, our purpose is just to tell about the kind of gameplay that you will be facing. We're not building Amnesia in VR, or we're not building Alien Isolation in VR. We're building a whole unique game. but it does borrow some elements from those games in terms of the more defensive approach to enemies, the narrative and exploration, which is key in those titles as well, where you gradually understand your role and purpose of being there, especially for Amnesia. So yeah, it's a bit scary. I mean, those two titles are really, really qualitative, and they're highly loved by the fans out there. So we're ambitious with this title. The whole studio is behind it. It's our most ambitious VR game yet, and have to aim high, I think, when it comes to this. We're not gonna make a cheap jump scare kind of game. Instead, we're aiming for a full VR game with a lot of qualities throughout the experience. So yeah, it's both scary and I think it's the right way.
I don't want to press you too hard for things you're not ready to reveal, but with knowing the character that we're playing as, can we assume that combat is like off the table, or as far as we know, traditional combat with guns and melee weapons and that kind of stuff, or maybe is there some kind of supernatural combat?
Yeah, we're not really revealing details yet about the encounters of the game. There will be encounters in the game, and you won't only have to rely on defensive manners, so to speak. You won't always have to hide, but we won't. It's not a game where you can go all guns blazing and hope to reach the end. Not saying that there will even be guns in the game, to be honest. So yeah, we'll reveal more later. We have a gameplay trailer coming up in August, and I think by then we should reveal a bit more about the gameplay mechanics. But you can expect different kind of encounters in the Barclay Mansion throughout the game. Yeah.
Okay.
That you have to tackle in certain ways.
Okay. Can you touch on a little bit about the controls? I know that Apex Construct had some really innovative controls. I thought the inventory system in that game was fantastic. What kind of stuff will we be kind of familiar with the controls from the get-go? Is it going to have DualShock 4 and move support, or just move support? Where are we at with all that stuff?
It's a little early to tell. I do think that the way we are building VR games, we're focusing a lot on interactions, especially hand interactions with the world. You're supposed to be able to open doors with your hands and open drawers and lift and throw things, and using the Wraith powers you will eventually get in a game is also very intuitive and I think quite immersive. So right now I think to get the best gameplay experience you do need controllers with movement mechanics in it. But we'll get back to specifics later on. We still have some time to go before the game is out. So as you mentioned, I think Apex, the inventory system was great for what it was at the time. We've studied a lot of different games since then, specifically for the inventory system. So the one we're making for Wraith, I think, is it's not necessarily a big jump from whatever Apex was, but it's definitely an evolvement or an upgrade to what that was at the time. Yeah.
I know that Curious Tale of the Stolen Pets was sort of a side project that was going on while you were working on some of these bigger titles. How big was the team during Apex, and how much has it expanded now for where we are with Wraith?
We've grown a lot lately. I mean, Apex, when the studio started, there were 6 people started to work on Apex, and by the end of Apex Construct launch, which is early 2017, I think, 2018.
2018. Yeah, I think
2018,
February. Yeah. I think I checked before the show.
Yeah, we were around 10 or 11 people at the project. And then Curious Tale, of course, started out with 2 people. I think we ended up maybe at 6 people working on that game in the end. So it was definitely a smaller, an experiment for us to see what we could do with that kind of diorama interaction and diorama miniature worlds. Right now we're 22 people, full-time employee at Fast Travel. So we hired a lot of people over the last 8-9 months, and basically all of us are working on Wraith at the moment. Maybe except for our CEO, he's on paternity leave, so he's probably working harder than we are at the moment. But the whole studio is behind it, and it says something about our ambitions, I think, as well. It's almost twice the size then as the Apex team.
Are you all working from home currently, or are you back to the office at this point?
We have last week or this Monday we were 4 people at the studio. So the majority is still working from home. That's the recommendation now in Sweden, to work from home if you can.
Yeah.
So we've said to the studio team that everyone should be working from home if they can, or really don't want to go to the studio, which is of course fine. It's their decision. But this is for up to the vacation period that's coming after midsummer now. So in August again, we might be back at the studio, which would be nice, to be honest.
Oh, I'm sure.
But it's okay. I mean, yeah.
Yeah, how are you finding working from home? Is communication been difficult? Has working together as a team been more difficult from this way?
I mean, I think there are things that you're not saying in the same way when you communicate in text, for example.
Yeah.
And it's not as easy to just strike up a video conference as it is to go to the coffee machine and then have a chat over there about lighting effects or whatever it can be. So I think it's slowing us down slightly, but not necessarily so much that it's impacting our development schedule. I don't think it's doing that at the moment, but it's probably more the joy of working for the company. I think we need to be together. Technically, you can do pretty much anything from home. We shipped all the equipment to all the developers to their houses very early on when COVID hit. So everyone is equipped to do what they need to do. But maybe a couple of percentage slower, I think, is probably right.
With the PlayStation 5 reveal, I guess we'll break the fourth wall here and let everyone know exactly when we're filming this. The PlayStation 5 reveal for us happened last night. So that's kind of like the thing that's on everybody's mind right now. And so when I saw that, in your marketing for this, and the press release says you're targeting all major headsets for Wraith.
Yes.
But there's no console listed. Can we confirm 100% that this is a PlayStation 4 game?
Yes. So we went with the semi-obvious, semi-concrete, all major VR platforms with the announcement now, and because we're still fine-tuning a bit our own communication and exactly release periods and what platforms and all that. But PSVR is of course a major VR platform. That's the headsets that's been selling the most out of them all. So this will of course be coming to PlayStation VR. Regarding if it's PS5 supported or whatever, that's something we have to get back to later on. But it's coming from PSVR.
And currently
would be weird. Huh?
I was gonna say currently you've got no release windows scheduled, right?
No, but we aim to announce that with the gameplay trailer in August.
Okay, wonderful.
So it won't be long until we can mention a bit about more when this game is coming.
Excellent. I know this was kind of a shorter interview, but I think it kind of had to be that way because of the way everything's happening. I think your game got announced a little bit earlier than you wanted it to, and I'm, where I am right now, I have no idea, even what questions to ask you about this game. So I can't wait to maybe sit down with you again closer to this game's launch, or maybe after launch, and we can kind of discuss how everything went down and talk about the game in a little bit more detail. But before we end this, is there anything you want to tell us about Wraith that we haven't talked about?
I think we covered the most of the stuff that we actually are able to say at the moment. But Oh, I mean, August 27 is when we plan to reveal the gameplay trailer. And that's something to look out for, I think. And if you want to, stay tuned on the game and follow us, it's at Wraith Afterlife on social media. So you can look us up there. And yeah, and and with the announcement trailer, we're probably going to reveal more about gameplay mechanics and the bit more deeper information about what you're actually doing in the game as well. But you can expect a very, very scary game and narrative-driven, exploration-based game, which is not your traditional jump scare ride, a horror mansion or whatever. And the mansion itself is actually really unique. It's a modern sort of state-of-the-art mansion, so it's far from the traditional Gothic castles or what you would expect from a traditional horror game.
I was very excited to hear that, actually, man. I love modern settings more than anything else. I don't know what it is about contemporary settings. So when I heard it, I was like, oh, man, that sounds really great.
Yeah. I think it's art team is doing a fantastic job now with creating a unique setting. And then we're playing it every Friday. I actually just played it before we started this interview, the latest build of it. And it's we have some people in the studio who really can't play it because they're too afraid.
I love hearing
which
that.
is really nice.
Yeah.
And this is before all the sound effects and all that are in place. It's still a scary game. So I'm really, really excited about letting horror game fans enjoy this in VR as well. It's can't wait for it.
Well, you're 100% speaking my language, man. If I don't know if there's another bigger VR horror fan out there than me. So when I heard that one of my favorite developers is making one of my favorite genres of games, I immediately, you saw the second that teaser leaked, I DM'd you immediately. I was like, we need to talk like right now. I'm so excited.
Yeah, of course. Yeah, we're always here. We can we're accessible and available at any time. So happy to jump on an interview at any time, or let one of the dev people talk as well. Maybe we can have Eric talk about his vision with the game and the story and all that as well.
Absolutely.
So,
no, as we get closer to launch, I can't wait to sit down and talk to you guys again.
Awesome.
Cool. Well, Andreas, it was awesome catching up with you. Like I said, we'll talk real soon, and good luck with your game. Fingers crossed, everything goes smoothly. You set some high standards here with the comparisons, Amnesia, Alien Isolation, and we can't wait to see how this turns out.
Awesome. Thanks for having me.
Hey,
take care now.
Don't forget to meow before you leave. You got to meow.
Oh, meow.
Later, dude.